seriously, don't watch this until you've seen the film. For all the others, I know you put in YouTube, oh, we love it when you just talk. We love your voices. You're so good. Fuck all that. Go away, watch the film first, then watch this, because there's no way to sort of do it justice with everything we've talked about.
Welcome back to Foreplay. We continue our Denis Villeneuve arc with an earlier film than Arrival. We did Arrival last week, if you guys missed it. It will be, this time, Prisoners, a 2013 film starring Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal. I had never seen this film prior to this show, so it was a very welcome surprise for me. Super enjoyable. And as we've said before, the rest of the Villeneuve arc will consist of Sicario next week. And the week after that, we will be doing Dune Parts 1 and Part 2. So it's our first arc looking at a single director, whereas previously we focused on time periods or genres. And alongside that, guys, we have a fun announcement. We, on Foreplay, are sponsored by Into the AM, which is a men's apparel company. We love their stuff. I think we're all wearing shirts right now made by them. Some graphic tees. I have a boat.
Should have been wearing this last episode, really.
The man falling through space.
I chose this one because I think it's called Abyss, the design. And obviously, as someone who spent his entire life staring into the abyss and then having it stare back into him. It was the perfect t-shirt.
Yeah, very good. I love the nautical themes. They've got a lot of different graphic tees, but if you're not into graphic tees, they also have a lot of men's basics, so it doesn't stop at t-shirts, even though the t-shirts are incredibly comfortable, super nice. You can get unbranded t-shirts, you can get athletic shorts, you can get joggers, you can get bomber jackets, you can get button-ups, you can get polos, you can get Henleys. They make it all, guys. It's been great. And as this episode is released, they are going to be having a significant sale for you guys. So if you go over to their site between May 20th and May 29th, they are having a Memorial Day sale that is 25% off site-wide. And on top of that, our discount code, which is intotheam.com/LFN, that's LFN for Last Free Nation, our discount code will always, regardless of their sale, give you an additional 10% off. So what I'm saying is, if you go between May 20th and 29th and use our code, you will get 35% off. So extremely good deal for you guys. It will be active when the show is released. So head on over there and check out Into the AM. They have been fantastic partners for us at Last Free Nation. We know a lot of you guys have bought their merch from our esports shows and have enjoyed that. They are now here on Foreplay as well. And the best way, as we say, to support us is to support our sponsors. So thank you to Into the AM.
By the way, I'll just say as well, I actually do think it's not just that, like, the design's cool. That the other thing compared to, like, I'm a person, I told you before, I've bought loads of t-shirts just for the design or because it had a comic book character on I wanted to show off or whatever. And mate, the worst thing about apparel is when you get it and it's like after like 3 washes, like you may as well be wearing a piece of cardboard. It's like, what the fuck, where's all the softness? Yeah. It's actually insane how the stretch just remains in this. It's actually the build quality is really good. It's really I've worn these loads of times.
Yeah, they're super nice, guys. We take sponsors that we genuinely like. It's really high quality. Everybody, you can check out our Discord server for Last Free Nation and our sponsor stuff. You'll see a lot of personal testimonials from people there as well. We all really enjoy it, so thank you very much. We will continue to roll with them. So let's get into Prisoners. So now many people have seen Dune at this point by Villeneuve. We talked about another sci-fi movie first to kind of get people into his oeuvre last week. Now, this is not a sci-fi movie. This is a crime family drama thriller that takes place in the American Midwest in rural Pennsylvania. Has some amazing performances from Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal, and is very, very different if you've only partaken in Villeneuve's sci-fi work like Blade Runner 2049 or Dune or Arrival. This predates all of it and really shows how intimate he can be and how dramatic he could be. If you guys like True Detective season 1, this came before that, and basically you could easily see this being transformed into a season of True Detective. It's cut from pretty much the same cloth, which is that it is a police thriller about the search for two young girls who have been kidnapped and the very strange people who are involved in this case, both on the families of the daughters, plus the cops, plus the eventual perpetrators, and the mysterious and kind of almost supernatural circumstances that surround the kidnapping and disappearance.
Yeah.
This is also why, by the way, I actually like that we're doing the director's series, because I actually think it's so hard to talk about Arrival or this film or even like Dune without being able to reference the other films. So I actually think that's why I like the order we've done this in, because there are so many things in Arrival that are done as well here, like not just the performances, but for example, if you watch the Arrival episode, one of the reasons why this is a mega back-to-back, one, I'll even tease this, I think this is even better than Arrival. I thought Arrival was very good. You'll see me and Richard sort of like fucking love that film. But in this one, I also think this is one of the most insanely good movies that, again, the first time you're like, right, that was something to watch. Tell you what, there's no way the rewatch will be as good. But what's insane is when you rewatch, you will find there is never a wasted line or dialogue, plot or scene in the film. Everything is a Chekhov's gun that will later be used and work into what the end thing is, even though the genius to tease it initially is you think they're classic cinema red herrings. You think they're a dead end. You think someone's wasting his time. You think there is nothing to find here. There's no other thing. There's only the central plot, which, by the way, the classic thing about a film like this is it makes you think, fuck, get back to that room. What's going on there? What is he going to say? But actually, everything you're being shown that you think isn't getting you anywhere, that the Jake Gyllenhaal characters investigate, for example, is actually all teased together. And in fact, I'll challenge you, like Arrival, it's not until you rewatch this film, you'll realize what bangers some of those details were. Like, obviously, I'll just hint at it now. That whole character by the guy who's called David Dasmalkian or whatever, who seems like just a complete dead end character. That is literally like the structure of the film is woven into what his story is, even though you think those are like, that's the equivalent of the false jump start, right? Where the cat goes by instead of the alien. You're like, oh, fuck, oh, bloody hell, I thought it was the alien coming by there. Essentially, like everything that you see in the film, there's so many lines that when you rewatch it, you're like, fuck, I didn't even realize what they were about. Even the whole thing with the priest guy. So we can get into so much with this film because I feel like it's one that it's funny, people watch it and think it's just a thriller. And do you get the girls or not and the bad guy? And it's like, that's so irrelevant to how it's woven together and how actually all the characters are missing all these crazy clues and things that are coming together. And one of the coolest things about this film, it's mega in this sense, is there's almost like a Rashomon effect where your perception of who you're told characters are and shown as initially will color who you think they are and what they're doing in a way that you are completely wrong about. And at the end, they never lied to you ever. They never tricked you ever. They never told you something false. They were telling you the whole time with a wink and a nudge and showing you something, but you just perceived Paul Dano's character one way, this Dalmatian guy or whatever one way. You thought you knew who those characters were, so you were ignoring the clues. It's actually, I think, another very well scripted film.
Yes, and the beauty about this film, where I think is actually where it differs from Arrival, is that there's a lot more allegory and metaphor and as you say, the allusions to things that are coming. And by the way, the biblical imagery in this film,
Sure, yeah,
is off the fucking charts. I mean, we'll probably talk about that somewhere down the road in the
conclusion, the reveal, obviously.
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, this is it takes something that unfortunately is shockingly mundane, which is the abduction and abuse of children, which obviously is happening like, all over the world, in every little neighborhood, always the ones you wouldn't expect. It's gone on all throughout history. And it drops you right into the middle of not just a police procedural, but a parental procedural. And that's where it gains so much of its power. The frustration of the police investigating this, knowing the fact that if you don't find a kid, typically within 48 hours, you find in a body, right? And then equally, a parent that is as aware of that, but is a man of faith being driven to go back and do things that he had renounced and swore he would never do again, but out of the love of his child, and how that tears apart a family. And like I say, all the imagery is huge. It's historical. It's biblical. It's beyond biblical. The detective is called fucking Loki, the trickster god of the Nordic tradition, and yet here we are in this slice of life drama when you dial down to it. This is another incredible script brought to vibrant life by a master director.
So effectively, guys, we're not going to go through all the beats of this story because this is just incredibly complicated. It is like some of the film noir ones that we did on the film noir arc, but effectively we
very
have
maze-like, you might say.
Very maze-like, we might say. So, this does probably require you to view the film before listening to this, because I want to spend most of the time getting into the actual meat of like all of the different plot narratives and like the perceptions of the characters and everything, because that's what's really fun to talk about this. But basically, Hugh Jackman, as I said, they're in rural Pennsylvania. Hugh Jackman stars as Keller Dover, who's one of the fathers of the missing girls. Essentially, they go over and visit a different family, the Birches, for Thanksgiving. They also have a young daughter. Their daughters are 6 and 7. They effectively leave the house to go play and like look for a whistle that was lost. And they are abducted, and the rest of the plot is Jake Gyllenhaal, who is Detective Loki, who is the police officer tasked with finding them. Plus Keller Dover, so Hugh Jackman character, also looking for them because he can do it in, let's just say, illegal ways. So, he's frustrated because the investigation is not moving as fast as he would like, or the police are not able to legally detain some suspects because they're not actually able to bring charges against them due to lack of evidence. And so it's about the family's private grief looking for their daughters, about Detective Loki hunting down the trail, about a variety of strange townies in this small community who are all, we find out later, interlinked in this process.
Which is a mega reveal in itself.
It's a mega reveal, right?
Yep.
And so it really is. It is film noir-esque in many ways, which True Detective was too. It's just the bend on this is much more kind of like questionably supernatural, or at least highly symbolic and like psychologically strange in the way that the first season of True Detective was. And so that's why I say if you like that, you will certainly really enjoy this film as well. And so eventually, they do find the daughters, but then, as we'll discuss later, the end does revolve around Keller Dover being kind of lost and entrapped. And so the prisoner's name not only refers to the girls that are stolen, but also to Dover in the end, and probably metaphorically to other characters as well, as I'm sure we'll get into.
Yes.
By the way, that's even one thing I'd set as the framing, is a way to look at this film, assuming you've watched it. Again, this is a terrible one to just listen to on a fucking podcast.
This is one of the worst ones without saying it, for sure.
Yeah. It's not you'll ruin the movie, but you will just you won't be able to enjoy some of the ways that the ride plays out, as it were. It's one of the things I thought was brilliant, is the framing, that it's the dichotomy between the approaches you can take to this situation. So the police character, the Jake Gyllenhaal guy, look, he himself is willing to go a little bit outside the law. He's willing to pressure someone in an interrogation scene. He's willing to go and investigate when he's being told just drop in or just do it by the book or whatever. Or all that.
He goes in every building without a warrant, so anything he finds would be inadmissible.
At the same time, though, he still clearly holds to some sort of police protocols and ethics. Whereas, yes, obviously the father figure, and the idea of a father would do anything, right? He's willing to go to the lengths that essentially he himself becomes some Nietzschean figure of he becomes a monster to hunt the monsters. And what I think is very interesting is both of them are allowed by circuitous means, you think are circuitous, but actually they're following a trail, just a different style of trail, do arrive both at the same conclusion at the end and find the person perpetrating it. But I'll say, I think an interesting aspect that I'd even set up at the beginning is the Jake Gyllenhaal character arrives in a way where he is able to, whether or not this is I think it's like the worst part of the film, he's able to save the day at the end. Whereas, for example, when the Keller Dover Hugh Jackman character arrives at his conclusion, I'll tell you what's weird that people won't think about about. This is where a traditional movie narrative will trick you and make you go along with things you wouldn't agree with, which is by the end, when he gets entrapped and fucked over, doesn't he deserve it? He's just tortured someone to every inch of their lives, assuming all sorts of crazy things about them.
Yep.
He's become a child abuser, essentially. And at the end, what, he gets entrapped by another one. Boo fucking who? I have to say that's actually one of the only parts, even though I was riding with him the whole way because of how raw the emotion and the fact that you know something's happened. And actually, what Monty said earlier is a key point as well, which is if you've ever watched one of these films, you're supposed to know that if they don't find him in the first 48 hours, it's over, they're dead. At that point, it's about how do you deal with the grief and will you ever sort of solve the cold case? The idea you're ever going to actually find them, that's why I teased that, I think at the end that might be the only part I don't like. The idea they ever actually get out alive and you find them all, that almost feels that you've gone into a flight of fantasy. The rest of it does feel like a really gritty drama. And obviously, like I say, if you wanted to give an example of the two, and I'll tie it into Arrival quickly, is one's trying somewhat to use investigation and actually find out clues and evidence and go through. The other one is just brute force. He has one method, like in Arrival, if all you have is a hammer, every problem starts to look like a nail. Brilliant in this case. He literally has a hammer at one point in time. So that's a line from Arrival, a movie that actually came ahead of this, by the way, afterwards rather. So one of the most interesting things about that is like his brute force approach, which you also think when you're watching it, the same way as you think Jake Gyllenhaal's barking up the wrong tree, he isn't. He's actually finding interesting clues that he just can't put together the bigger picture of. The actual Hugh Jackman character does get what he wants out of all this. He actually does find like the way through, as it were. It's just who the fuck would ever go that route? Like that is, I have to say, this is one of the most compelling but hardest films to watch ever. And it's not even like, by the way, the joke is when we got to like the Steam thing, they don't even show you that. You just hear a guy screaming, but fucking hell is that hard to watch.
I might even go so far as to add that I kind of had the same thoughts you did initially about, like him getting his daughter back is a bit far-fetched, but I also think it adds it adds an extra layer to the torture, because even though the movie ends abruptly, we know that
he can't ever have a family
Keller,
life after this, can he? He's got him back, but he's not the
exactly.
same fucking guy, is he? He's ruined it, yeah.
Exactly, and
I agree.
I think it's almost more. I think it's
They only infer that, you're right.
More,
They don't hit it that hard, yeah.
It's way more torturous to know that ultimately what he did may have moved the dial on her getting back, but actually kind of not.
Sure.
And he's done all these terrible things. Ultimately, broken his own protocols of his faith in is really degraded himself as a person because he's prioritized the life of his child over even his own soul. And so I think the end, knowing that he's definitely going to prison, right? They explicitly say that. If we find your husband, he's
By
going.
the way, logically, if God exists, he's going to hell. He just tortured someone who's actually an innocent victim himself.
Yes, exactly. And so I think ultimately you don't need to layer on and your daughter's dead, mate, because
True.
It's almost worse in a way that she comes back alive and is going to be deprived from her father, and you're going to be deprived from her after all the lengths you went to. So, I mean, look, this is definitely a movie about lots of things, but I think at its core, it's ultimately, what are you willing to do in service of the people you love or profess to love? And all the characters are essentially in various stages or performances of that. And that applies to Loki as the detective, who's obviously, you can tell he is personally invested in the case. He doesn't want to lose a kid. There's these inferences at various lines that he's had things go bad before. You can see he's not a perfect police officer. He's young. He seems to be tortured for a variety of reasons. He is willing
it's
to go
implied
the
that he's
extra
like an
mile.
orphan or was in a house for boys.
Exactly, right? He's from a troubled past. So what are you willing to do to, in service of that? The parents of Paul Dano, they're abducting kids because they lost their own child and they want to avenge their son's death. They say it's part of their war on God,
which is
they are
so
at war
epic,
with
by
God
the way.
themselves.
And like the Christian undertones of this are obviously huge. From the very opening of this film is Hugh Jackman doing the Lord's Prayer as they kill the deer, right?
Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
And in a way, I mean,
the whole case is only solved because a man give confession.
Yes, correct. And so, look, it's everyone is doing something they believe is the right thing to do.
Well,
and ultimately, a lot of it is misguided.
But that's the first scene, right? Like as they kill the deer by saying the Lord's Prayer, it is almost as if this is a justification for killing to survive, basically, while invoking the name of God, because they are ultimately going to eat this deer and it's going to sustain them. But it's almost as though the act of saying the Lord's Prayer, which comes back later, especially as he's imprisoning and torturing the kid who we think is Alex Jones, but isn't Alex Jones, not the Alex Jones, but just
Can we just call him Paul Dano for the purposes of this episode?
Because he's not actually Alex Jones.
His character is called Alex Jones is a mind fuck I don't need.
Well, that's how you know it's a good film, because actually once you've heard it a few times, you go, you know what, I'm going to turn that off. Turn that reference off. I'm into the film. Also, by the way, I'll even say as well on this film, on that angle of like the religious aspect and all that stuff. Let me think. I was going with this. Fuck, where was I going on that?
It's all right.
No, never mind. I'll get back.
I mean, but it is about the use of Christianity repeatedly for individual motives and as justifications, and the cross symbolism.
What was it? Yes.
Whether through
Snakes.
Keller Dover's character, the snakes, obviously the representation of original sin, even the tattoo on Jake Gyllenhaal's hand, which is a cross. The priest who what's interesting about the whole priest narrative is that he is actually a sex offender, which is why Jake Gyllenhaal is at his house, is because he's looking through potential all the like high level sex offenders within the area who could have abducted these girls, and that's where he gets into the priest's house and then discovers the dead man who it turns out is the husband of Holly Jones in the basement, right? Which is also very cleverly revealed bit by bit through the film. By the way, I was going to say, I remember what it was now. The most genius dynamic of this film that you don't realize till you get to the end is whenever anyone says the idea, like, what would you do for your family? What would you go through? They always take it as you'd be the victim. You'd be being tortured and you wouldn't relent. You'd be having to get fucked over and you wouldn't. The idea you'd torture someone to get the information. The idea you'd go to any length to get them back. Would you kill would you essentially do to someone else what might have been done to your child to get them back? Would you ever do that? Because everyone says that line. Like, it's like when people say in esports, I'd do anything to win. It's like, you won't, motherfucker. You won't even practice. You won't get over your ego with this guy. You won't join this team that you should, that you beat you in the past and you hit you won't. You just say that as lip service. So every family member would say, I'd do anything for my kids. It's like, tell you what, this guy on camera did. And actually, I don't know if I fucking agree with some of it. He went pretty fucking far, mate.
Tony! 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 Where's my daughter? Where's my daughter?
I mean, the horrible reveal is that when we find out that Alex Jones isn't Alex Jones, he is another abducted child who's been named Alex Jones to be, to pretend to be the family member, is that, the reason why he can't speak and he has the IQ of a 10-year-old is because he went through extreme trauma at the hands of Holly Jones and her husband. And so basically what you find out Keller Dover's character has been doing has been abusing somebody who was already a victim and was already abused, thinking that he is complicit in the plot, when in fact he is just another victim of Holly Jones, which is like so deeply fucked up.
Also, why the rewatch again is going to fucking hit you even harder. I'm telling you right now. Like, I'll tell you a scene. I'll give you a little tease that if you've ever watched this more than once, you'll know what I mean. There's like in the Paul Dano thing, the best thing about his whole performance, because it is like almost someone who barely can talk and can barely socially interact, but is there sort of, but you're just reading it as a creepy weirdo who won't speak and he's being, in fact, you almost get the feeling like he's a trickster guy. Like, is he getting off on this? Does he like the fact that he can't figure? What the worst part of it all is when you, like Hugh Jackman, Jackman have the realization none of that was the case. He's not even who you think. He's a victim involved in all this. And by the way, here's one of the creepiest fucking scenes when you go back, is when Jake Gyllenhaal first goes, when he's being released from prison and he's with the aunt, that fucking woman who was the one with the war against God at the end. And she's clearly like the fucking handler of this guy, controlling him. And she's even sat there like this. And then when it's like, oh, can I talk to him alone? It's like, yeah, sure. I'll just be in the other room. And like the whole vibe from that guy, when you really watch that scene, knowing he wasn't the guy, you will interpret it. So that's a guy who's scared to talk. You almost can't say anything because you know she's going to come back in. And he's been abused and repressed his whole life. And he's been forced into this fucked up side way. And now he has to procure the girls for people. Like, oh, the whole thing is like the rewatch again will change the contrast and the lighting of every scene for you completely in a way that it'll just reinvent the movie to you.
Can I speak to Alex alone for a minute?
It's all right, sweetie. I'll be right in the next room.
Yeah.
And as I said before, there's a million clues in this one, a million, Brent, and I missed them all because the nature of the film is you want to miss them all. You want to think Jake Gyllenhaal's just desperate, like Richard said, he's desperate to get this case. He can't let this one get away from him. He promised the family. He let the guy go. Hugh Jackman, the whole premise there, you think he's just clutching at straws, isn't he? It's too late. His kid's gone. He can't ever go back to normal life again. So he's willing to think anything's possible. So the joke is when they're bringing up all these other things and these other things that seem like the distractions, we ourselves have the preconception that they're nonsense. And so we don't notice them, but man alive, they all eventually come to mean so much.
It's even worse than you said, because the line that triggers his torture from Alex Jones, who is Paul Dano, he says to Hugh Jackman, "They didn't cry till I left them."
Yes.
Hey! Tell me what you did with them! Tell me!
They didn't cry until I left them.
What did you say? No!
And so Hugh Jackman's mind, well, he must have abducted them. He must have done something to them. But what that tells you is he actually comforted them.
Yes.
So he tortured this childlike simpleton who's obviously so.
And later the reveal of who he is also so insane.
Yeah, exactly. Like this guy is emotionally underdeveloped because he was abducted, tortured, and then made to replace a child who died.
He was done in the same way. He was playing in the RV or whatever. It's the same fucking concept,
exactly.
And that's what he has to be involved with later.
And which is why he offered comfort to the girls initially before being separated from them. So the one person who offered them comfort in these dark moments is the one that Hugh Jackman is tortured to within an inch of their life. And guys, when we say tortured, it's
one of the hardest movies to ever watch, seriously.
They take this guy and so Hugh Jackman owns a dilapidated, boarded up house that he used to live in before he got his apartment building. He got his life together. They've got a nice house.
It was his dad's apartment building.
Yeah. He left it to him. That's right, isn't it? And so anyway, it's all boarded up and shit. And anyway, he doesn't have much cause to go there, and they can't sell it. It's in all the other houses look the same, apartments all look the same. And so anyway, he takes Paul Dano to that. And then they initially just handcuff him to a radiator and they're just beating the shit out of him.
You notice it has the vibe of a CIA black site, by the way. There's clear allusions to 24 and getting the information out the guy for the bomb and that. It's totally there,
yeah. And so he's beating this guy. And then when they're done beating the guy, and that doesn't work because the guy is unfortunately unable to communicate any of these stuff because of his limitations.
His PTSD, basically.
Yeah, that too, right? But I mean, I do think it's coded to say that he probably had issues before these terrible things happened to him.
Or the terrible things caused him brain damage.
Yeah.
I mean, think of the scene, by the way, early on. I'll get to this in a second, again, which gives you these preconceptions where they're watching him before he kidnaps him and he just tortures that dog for a second and you think, this guy has to be the fucking guy.
Yeah,
it's so clever the way it's set up because it's implied there's something fucked up about him too,
So then they lock him in a water heater cupboard where they have control.
No. They build, Keller Dover builds him a shower stall. He builds a prison inside a shower stall.
Yeah,
so he can't lie down.
Yeah. So he's permanently stood up in a dark coffin that he can just scald him with scorching hot water.
So bad.
No light gets in. It's Barely enough room to sit down inside. Shower still works, but we control it from out here. I rig the water heater, so it either comes out scalding or freezing.
It's like, Hugh Jackman is put it this way. There was a line in League of Gentlemen, which not a lot of people will have seen. And by the way, modern sensibilities aren't ready for League of Gentlemen, so maybe don't watch it so you don't cancel.
You mean the
them.
comedy?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
there was
course,
a
right.
line in League of Gentlemen.
It doesn't mean League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, by the way. It's a British
Don't watch
comedy.
that.
It's very dark.
Yeah,
Yeah,
League of Gentlemen. It's a very dark comedy.
Yeah.
It's informed by horror. It's the people who went on to do Inside Number 9. But anyway, there's a line where this girl says, "I saw my father beat a man until him and the man were both crying," right? And that always stayed with me because that is so dark. Like, imagine beating up someone so bad that as you're doing it, you're moved to tears at the horror of the violence, right? That image, that happens in this film, right? You are watching Hugh Jackman torture someone to the point where he is in tears, begging him, don't make me do like.
Why are you making me do this?
Why are you making
I have
me
a
do
question.
this?
Why are you making me do
I have a
this?
question for the panel. Here's the I'm going to already make it uncomfortable because one of the reasons why this film is so compelling, you can't look away, but you know you want to. Like, you know what's coming. It's all foreshadowing. You know, literally, this torture is going to happen. Here's the biggest problem I have. Cause as a natural film viewer, you want him to save the girls and you want to know what happens in the plot and you want it to progress. A part of you, I want to know if this was the case, isn't a part of you like, oh, don't do it. You have to do it though. Do it. Oh, don't do it though. It's being human to do it. But at the end of the day, how are you going to get the information? You'd have to press that. But you know what? Press the button.
Mate,
Like, isn't part of you sort of going along with them?
I'll do you one better. The reason this film emotionally resonates and leaves you feeling weird at the end is you know that you would do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're watching it. And you're going, if it was my kid.
I think,
I mean, if you're a parent
even if
this,
you, like I was going to say, I'm a parent now, and it definitely changes my reaction to this film.
Yeah.
And I think what's even more insidious, Richard, is that it's not just that you would do it. Okay, so pretend you're not going to go as far as Keller Dover. Well, what about Franklin Birch and Nancy Birch, who are the parents of the other kid? And even though Franklin is the other father is objecting to it, ultimately he lets it go. And when
they even enable him at first,
yeah,
and they don't.
And when Nancy Birch, when Franklin Birch is about
to
stop it because it's gotten to the point where he's in the shower, basically, you know, that's where Nancy Birch, who's played by Viola Davis, comes in and she stops her husband from breaking him out.
Franklin, think of joy.
Yeah.
And they're given a choice, too, because Keller Dover, Hugh Jackman basically says, if you want to let him out, you guys let him out. But you know I'm right.
A beautiful part of that dynamic is there's a meta commentary there on society and the
I was going to go there.
permissiveness of violence. So you go first. Do yours.
Okay, I was just going to say it. In the same way as I alluded to, I clearly see the torture scene. The joke is this movie should have come out in 2003 because it's almost trying to invoke as to why Guantanamo Bay would be acceptable to Americans. Because the show 24, if you don't know, was clearly a fucking psyop to make you accept that as long as you get the coordinates of the bomb, any amount of torture is acceptable because you're the hero in the end. You save the lives. They never ever explore what this movie didn't explore also, which is what if you did all that and you got nothing at the end? What happens then? What happens if it was the innocent man you hung, as it were? And so the thing I was going to reference, I don't know if this is what Richard was thinking of, is the great George Orwell quote, isn't it? Because what those parents do, I look the way both parents have a different reaction. Terrence Howard knows you can't be part of this, but I'm not going to stop you though. And then the mother's just sort of like, fucking double down on this motherfucker, because it's that great quote by George Orwell, which Richard's right, because we've made violence completely monopolized by the state. There's a legendary quote which everyone who ever lived in the British Empire or the vestiges will understand, and it goes like this, because obviously we all think of England as Hobbiton and everyone's like, oh, cheerio, hello, but why are you able to live that life? Why didn't someone come and take that from you? Because it's this quote that says people sleep peacefully in their beds at night because rough men stand ready to do violence on their behalf. And that is, to me, what this was inferring. That's like a key to, essentially, the reason why you can't watch this and go, it's just a weird movie, mate. No, the point of this movie is, if you really thought the stakes were at that level, would you just go, oh, well, there's no legal means to get this, I'll just tank this one, fuck my life. And no, wouldn't part of you just go unleash hell on these motherfuckers? I gotta say, that's why I actually wanted to check early on if you guys were on board with that, because I actually don't want to feel like at the end I'm morally like fucking, I'm out of it. I'm complicit in this fucking movie.
It's an impossible question, because I think everybody knows that even if you, that's why I think the dynamic between the two sets of parents is so important, because basically you have Keller Dover, who's the one who's going to extremes. You have his wife, who is basically just drugged and asleep the entire time and avoiding the confrontation. And then you have the sort of complicit Birches within all of this, who the blood's not really technically on their hands, even though they would go, obviously they go to prison too as accessories in this instance. But it's like, they will do anything. And would you do any different, especially with the information that they had, right? Which is that there isn't enough. I mean, Detective Loki, Jake Gyllenhaal's character, he really tries to get charges against Paul Dano's character, Alex Jones, but there isn't anything there. And so, it's, the system is working as intended, where you're not going to just illegally detain people on a hunch. But then again, there is something to human intuition, right? And that's what Keller Dover's character and the Birches are going off of. And ultimately, they're right about the connection. They're just wrong about who the actual criminals are.
Yes.
It's for me, how I interpreted it, the complicity of the other family. It's meta commentary about class and how society can only ultimately, like, violence, unfortunately, will always be an essential component until we evolve beyond that point, right? And so they aren't willing to take a hammer to someone with,
but they're the upper class ones, because
needs.
She's a veterinarian,
exactly.
And
she's a veterinarian,
contractor.
Exactly. Exactly. But so who do they get to do their violence for them?
The blue collar guy.
The blue collar guy, exactly. And so it is a meta commentary on how societies function. Hey, listen, we won't write you out to the police. You have at it. Hey, we won't think too much about it over our fucking wine evening, when we're having charcuterie and talking about, which Democrat we like best for a presidential election. But, at the end of the day, if you want to do that shit on our behalf so we can enjoy that lifestyle, you fucking have at it.
We're not gonna help Keller, but we won't stop him either. Let him do what he needs to. We don't know about it anymore.
And that, to me, right there, is another layer to the film. I mean, like, think about how Hugh Jackman's character is coded right the way through. Blue collar guy, capable
Catholic.
of building things, good with his hands, likes to hunt, right? Yeah, but also devout and religious. And also, I think it's an especially sick twist that they get their kid back first. He's done all the emotional labor. He's put himself out there. He's literally condemning, by his own beliefs, his soul to hell, potentially, to save his child. And they're allowing him to do it, but they're not coming along. They are not going to risk the same level of damnation he is, and they get their kid back. Well, that's all the rich kids that get to dodge the draft, isn't it? That's high society sticking it to the blue collar over and over again, wrought large in this tiny slice of life drama. Oh yeah, there's fucking layers to this film. Yeah.
Oh, by the way you know, this is where you know that he can never come back and uncross the Rubicon of what he's done. Because when they get their daughter back, it doesn't even fucking touch the sides. In fact,
No.
he wants to grill their daughter when she's all
Yeah.
drunk. It's like, you know what, motherfucker? Where's my daughter?
Really awkward scene as well.
Wait, he'd have put her in that fucking shower if he could have. He had to get the information. He was that far gone, mate. He was committed to the whole thing. He was all in for a
But
penny,
you
in
had to
for a
be at that
pound.
point. Had to be at that point.
Yes.
Joy, were you far from the street? How far from the street were you, Joy? Joy,
You can't be doing this
how
now.
long did it take you to get there? Just let me ask a question, please.
Keller.
And you know, I think it also like sort of heavily implies, and again, because the beauty of this movie is it doesn't do this like, you know, fucking ignore, you know, really boring, like, you know, oh, let's tie up all the loose ends and explain, and this is where they went, and Hugh Jack, you know, or having a text crawl, Hugh Jackman went to prison, you know, after the incident, you know, it's none of that, right? What they do that's fucking like so good is they just leave it up, and you know their relationships are fucked. That wonderful, warm family, you know, two families coming together as friends, kids playing, it's all gone. It's all destroyed because of this.
You could argue he traded everything just
Yeah.
to literally get
Yes.
the daughter back. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
But he ruined
trades-
every other aspect of his life.
Yes, he's completely destroyed his life. He surrendered his faith. He surrendered his eternal soul. He has surrendered his friendship. But that's how much he loves his kid. And by the way, it's super fucking believable. I mean, segueing into talking about performance, for me, I'm going to talk a lot about Hugh Jackman here, but this for me is his career best performance.
It's amazing.
He fucking moved me in ways I never thought Hugh Jackman would be able to. I remember watching this for the first time in the cinema. I was in a fucking failing relationship. I dragged my girlfriend out for a miserable date night when we knew it wasn't working, and we sat in the cinema and watched this. And I was like, really,
there, right?
yeah, exactly, mate. And it's why the film is burnt into my brain.
Right.
And I was like, obviously, I was still, you know, I wasn't very zen in 2013. Esports was kicking my ass, and you know, I was watching this, and I was like getting fucking emotional, you know, like I'm welling up. Hugh Jackman's doing that to me in this movie. You know, you see a movie, Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, Paul Dano, you go, well, this is a silly film, isn't
Yeah,
it?
is this a dark comedy?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what is this, right? Terrence Howard, right? You know, Hugh Jackman was making me well up in the cinema.
And every day, she's wondering why I'm not there to fucking rescue her. Do you understand that? Me, not you, but me. Every day. So forgive me for not going home to have a good night's rest.
He just fucking full sends this.
Not even nominated for Best Actor, by the way,
Yeah,
which is
outrageous.
outrageous. Outrageous.
And I'm gonna go one step further. I think Hugh Jackman, because he's Australian, I think he's kind of accepted something that I just don't think he ever should have, and that is that he has accepted ultimately what is a type of objectification about him, and he's fell into this role because he's from a world of musical theater. Oh, let's give him a show tune. Let him do Les Miserables. Or here he is.
He
as
was
Wolverine.
nominated for Best Actor for Les Miserables the year before this.
Which is a disgrace, also, because I don't even think it's a particularly good
But
version of the musical.
I think people get caught up in the Hugh Jackman as the. I mean, what's amazing about Hugh Jackman is his range, right? He can
Yes.
sing, he can dance.
That's what I was gonna say.
He's fucking Wolverine. It's crazy.
If you say to him, we just want you to look pretty and have a six-pack, he's an unbelievably dedicated physical actor. But his body transformations never get talked about, but they're up there with anyone in Hollywood. The degrees that he's put himself through. Now, there's a debate online about whether he juices or not. He definitely didn't juice for the first X-Men. And I know when he rocked up for the first one, none of y'all were expecting him to be that. But he nailed Wolverine, and then he got fucking better and better, whether it's chemical or not. I don't give a fuck. You still got to be in the gym. But here's what no one talks about. This motherfucker did The Fountain.
Yeah.
And it's such a deft touch. I know it's one of Duncan's favorite films.
If we do The Fountain,
Don't
Duncan and I have talked a lot about The Fountain in the past, so I'm sure we'll do that one at some point.
Right?
But it is, yeah, go on.
He did. I was just gonna say he did The Prestige, right? He did this. He is some. By the way, and I don't give a fuck. I'll go to the wall for his performance in Logan. I thought, like, listen, the rest of the X-Men movies that had come before it, they were falling into just dumb cape shit fodder. I think his performance in Logan is actually fantastic. And I don't give a fuck whether people are like, oh, you lost me there or not. This guy has legit acting chops. And it's just like, because he looks good running around with fake claws, like, people have really underestimated what this guy is capable of. And this, for me, it would be this or The Fountain. This, for me, is his career best performance. This is the peak.
I was actually going to
thing.
do something similar. I was going to say that the joke is, when it was just The Prestige and The Fountain, which both came out the same year, I was like, I fucking hate that I have to tell people these are two of my favorite films, because they're going to go, big Hugh Jackman fan. I'd go, not really. Just
Not really.
Those. Yeah. But if you look, those two came out in 2006. This came out in 2013. So in an 8-year span, he did 3. Like, these could all win the Oscar, like, for the fucking leading performance. They're unbelievable performances. And so actually, I have to agree with you. You think of him, and I think this is even why I didn't watch this film for many years. I saw the trailer and thought, it's just a cop procedural with, like, a guy who's like, oh, get my dog back. It's like, oh, this could just be any old fucking shit box office film. Like, those 3 performances, that's like up there with any great actor, mate. That makes him one of, like, the best actors of his generation, unironically. But you're just thinking of him in a musical and in X-Men and, like, the things that are sort of less significant. But these 3 performances are fucking straight fire. Like, the joke is, if we hadn't have done this director series, we could have done the Hugh Jackman season, and 3 of the movies would be unbelievable. If you haven't seen them, go watch all of those movies that you just said now.
Yes, yeah, and they're all by like mega directors too. Like, people don't know that. Like, The Fountain is probably Aronofsky's least watched film, but that's a Darren Aronofsky movie. Obviously, The Prestige is early Christopher Nolan. And now, I mean, he was working with mega directors. Now this is a Villeneuve movie, and he was actually working with all these guys like pretty early in their careers, which is interesting.
Which also implies, by the way, their eye for talent saw something in him. And so it's more like Richard said, he's more than just a buff guy or like, hey, Mr. Sunshine, I'm coming out. He's more than that. He's way more than that.
He has done as well, like Loki, some movies that like have bombed, but he is really good in them. Like, he's one of these dudes that like in the same way I feel about Denzel Washington. Although, look, I'm not gonna. Denzel Washington was one of the best actors of his generation, so it isn't a fair comparison. But if Denzel Washington's in a film, I don't give a fuck if it's Glory or The Equalizer. It's Denzel motherfucking Washington. I'm watching all his films. Of course I am. Why would I deprive myself of that? What I quickly realized was Hugh Jackman was getting into that, because I'm gonna watch all the cape shit anyway. But he did a movie which bombed. It was a political movie called The Front Runner. Right now, the movie's not good. The script is too on the nose. It's, classic, like, American political satire, but they're never willing to go too far on it, because if you were, you might say something bad about the good guys, and we can't have that, right? But if you go watch it, it's he's playing Gary Hart, right? Who was meant to be the front runner back in the 80s, to be a future president. Watch him in that. Just watch him in that. You wouldn't even know it's him. It's reminiscent of when Russell Crowe did The Insider.
All right.
Reminded me a lot of that, And as I said, I think this is a guy who has range that has just been, that's what I mean. I think it's almost like a form of objectification. Hey, we need a guy who's good looking, can sing, can dance, and has abs. Who can we get in Hollywood that fits all that? Well, Ryan Gosling's not available, so maybe Hugh Jackman, right? And it's like, no, this fucker can go to some insane places if you give him the material. And like I say, every scene he's in prison is like, you believe this is a man going through, like, hell. Like, it is such a powerful performance. And by the way, everyone is great in this movie, but put it this way, Paul Dano, Terrence Howard, Jake Gyllenhaal. If I told you that, like, it's Hugh Jackman that clears them by like a million miles, you wouldn't believe me. But when you watch this movie, you will.
And Jake Gyllenhaal too. I mean, I agree. I think that this is an all-time great performance by Hugh Jackman. But Jake Gyllenhaal also, especially because the next year in 2014, Gyllenhaal did Nightcrawler, and just the comparison between his like sociopathic journalist character in Nightcrawler and his cop character here is so night and day. You really get to see a crazy range just by watching those two films with Jake Gyllenhaal in them, and he's
always had
excellent
a
in
soft
both.
spot for. Always had a soft spot for. Look, I always remember that Family Guy bit where it's like. It's never going to end, like an argument about who's the worst between Maggie and Jake Gyllenhaal, and then it just cuts to them and they go, "You're just both awful," and it's like I've never felt that way. I love.
Listen, mate, he'll always be Donnie Darko to me.
It's
Yeah,
true.
well,
Yeah.
yeah,
Always.
like I love Maggie as well. Like I think she takes really interesting projects, and she's a very intelligent and astute actor. But I've always had a soft spot for Jake, even when Jake Gyllenhaal does throwaway garbage. Like
He's thrown some in for sure.
Roadhouse
And taking some checks. Yeah, of course.
The Roadhouse remake, mate. I downloaded that and watched that on a plane, and I'm ashamed.
Here's
of
what's
myself.
brilliant is, remember, the first one is so good that it's bad, so bad that it's good, right? You have to enjoy it like that, Richard. Like, as soon as you realize the movie is just Conor McGregor allegedly on cocaine, just walk around going, it's actually, in a way, really good, but it's total shit, of course. It's absolute trash.
But
if they thought that was good, it wasn't good.
But let's talk about his fucking highlight reel. Donnie Darko, what a way to fucking announce yourself to the world, effectively. Absolute banger, right? Brokeback Mountain, just fucking unbelievably heartbreaking. I know Heath Ledger gets all the flowers for that one, but Jake obviously plays his part in it. He did fucking Jarhead. He did fucking Zodiac. He did fucking Enemy by Villeneuve. He did fucking Nightcrawler, right? Like this guy does
pretty good resume, yeah.
Yeah, this guy does good fucking films, man. So like the idea that like everyone here, by the way, is swinging for the fences. I love Terrence Howard. I think he's Hollywood's
I mean, the cast
man.
is nutty in this too.
Yeah,
It's just nutty.
like, but Hugh Jackman is just this is it. This is the time capsule movie for him.
By the way, if you don't know, just because it's fun to look into and there's some really interesting rabbit hole material on YouTube, one of the reasons why Terrence Howard is a huge actor, because if everyone remembers, he was going to be the next. He was going to be the next Denzel Washington. He had that like fucking quality, skills,
hustle and flow.
Like famously, the example is when
top 30 movie for me.
When he's in Iron Man and he gets replaced by Don Cheadle, fucking boo! Throw the fucking tomatoes at the screen. Yeah. That's not even a 1-for-1. It's because what happened is in real life, Monty. This is not a joke. I mean, I thought for a while it might be like where Joaquin Phoenix pretended to be that character for a while, and it turned out it was all for a movie. Right? I thought it was going to be like that because he was doing this thing where basically he said that as a child. This tangent's going somewhere. As a child, he like intuitively understood the mathematical nature of like the universe essentially, and what he did the whole time he was an actor, whether you believe this or not, again, take it like some Andy Kaufman-esque skit, right? The whole time he was an actor, Monty, he secretly, even though he wasn't not really a mathematician or physicist, he's been working on solving like fucking, I don't know, like Aristotle's like universal solids of what conceptual shapes exist and control like the vacuum of space. And basically he's gone completely off that end and he's done stuff like he's solved that, like, for example, you would probably think like a naive fool, Monty, that 1 times 1 is 1. Wrong, idiot, it's 2. And if you just go look up on YouTube, go look up some interviews, you're going to have
TikTok
fun.
Algorithm at the
you
moment,
are going to have, of course he is, he's based as fuck in all the right and wrong ways.
He said,
he's a brilliant actor though.
He literally, right, here's what this has got nothing to do. So this has nothing to do with anything we're talking about here, but I was like watching like late night YouTube shorts with Insomnia, and Terrence Howard is there, and he said like fucking there's no such thing as a straight line. He's going like nothing in the universe can be straight. It's all curved. And he brings up these diagrams and he's like doing a talk at a university about it. And the top comment underneath.
Come on, hit me with the fire.
Diddy, when asked about the allegations.
That's pretty good. That is actually pretty good.
I
put it to you that from the work of Professor Terrence Howard, there's no such thing as a straight line or anything else. Nothing straight. Exactly.
Exactly. I loved it. I fucking loved it. Straight fire. But yeah, unfortunately, Terrence Howard's personal life seems to have precluded him from getting more work. And that's a real shame because I think he's a fantastic actor. Hustle and Flow is so good. Such a great movie. But like, I do think he brought some gravitas even to the Marvel stuff. Frankly,
Yeah, he did.
Don Cheadle, I like him. He's done some good movies. Just wasn't the same kind of
No,
figure.
he
He
can't hold his
didn't.
jock, mate.
Well, yeah, he didn't feel like he could really push back against Tony Stark in the same way Terrence Howard could. There was a real believable authenticity there. And I think Terrence Howard, by the way, I think he's great in this film too. Really believable as the kind of middleman, the guy who wants to get the kids back. He doesn't he might do it, he might do the terrible things. Oh, but my wife said I shouldn't. Oh no, but okay, but you know,
It's like a Lady
see,
Macbeth
yeah.
kind of relationship in a
Yeah,
way.
right, yeah, for sure. But I really like him in this movie. I think he is a wonderful supporting actor here, and actually the perfect contrast to Jackman in the places to where he goes. Like probably Jackman's descent isn't as powerful if there isn't Terrence Howard stood right by him, going like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, right.
Shit, man, this ain't right. I mean, what if you're wrong?
I'm not wrong.
No, what if you're wrong? What if you only heard what you wanted to hear? What if... Man, I want my daughter back as much as you do, but it ain't right.
Frank!
And we're both of them in those scenes. That's also the genius of it, right? We're watching him do it, go, fuck, don't. But then part of us is also like, it must be done.
Yeah. Yeah,
And-
well, as I said, look, I'm gonna say this. Even knowing how the movie ends, I kind of am Team Dover a little bit. I put myself in that situation. No, I'm being real.
No, I think you're right.
Put myself in that
that's the purpose
situation.
of the art, right? Is that
Yeah.
it's supposed to make you uncomfortable, and I think that many people would be. I think the actions of many people would much be more in the Dover camp than just sitting around waiting for Jake Gyllenhaal to solve the crime, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, the funny thing is, the Jake Gyllenhaal angle is actually what you normally expect from a cop procedural. It's like follow clues from clue to clue to clue, figure out eventually, wait a minute, there's a bigger picture, they all connect, all that shit. But like I say, because of the emotional aspect of you think the Kellen Dover guy's just grasping for straws. You think Jake Gyllenhaal's just running down any lead because there is no legal method by which you have to torture him to get the information. That's all just a side thing to distract you from that. But what's genius is, as a result, I agree, the cast mega. The two supporting actors, Paul Dano, like I said before, there are a million things that when you rewatch, you will realize that when you know he didn't do it, and even worse, he is the fucking boy of the mother that they go and visit, that woman like the sort of hair, who sort of explains that years ago her kid was taken and you never get them back and it's just gone. And of course, everyone knows there's nothing you can do about that. He is that kid. And then even worse is the one I referenced earlier. It's the David Dasmalchian guy who plays the sort of person you think is the one who's abducted them, the would-be serial killer, who himself, if you don't get it, first of all, that actor, I'm just going to make a point, he is going to be this generation's Brad Dourif, if you know how that guy was cast in the X-Files, and every creepy, weirdo, serial killer, weird guy.
Lord of the Rings.
You see him on camera for a second, you know he has, Grimmer Worm, everything. You see him on camera, you know there's something weird about this guy, something unsettling. So
have you seen the new movie he's done, by the way? The
No, which
Late
one?
Night with the Devil. It's
I'll
out
definitely
now.
watch it.
Yeah, it's really good.
Because like I say, just
enjoyable.
his atmosphere, just like Paul Dano, the way he's set up and weird and creepy, even the glasses, and in this case, the fact he's this weird character. Again, like Kellen Dover, you have actually no hard evidence he is what you're thinking or that he did any of this, but you just feel so unsettled, you want him to be destroyed. You want him to be killed. You want him to be the bad guy. And you want him to be, even though, like Paul Dano, he is a victim. I think a lot of people missed that part, by the way. That's the part of the reveal they missed, is this character. This character, guys, the one who had all the mazes and the one who had all the snakes, and then he himself had weird, like, things from the scenes of crimes to do with this. You're thinking he's some fucking, at minimum, he's a weirdo red herring like other serial killer, or even worse, he is the guy, and he obviously isn't. What you find out later is, just as Paul Dano's been forced to become complicit, this guy is one of those people where the only way, because he himself escaped, the only way he can actually deal with what he went through, where he was one of the victims of the people who did it to Kellen Dover's daughter, by the way, is he himself has to sort of like get close to these things again. In fact, he almost has to recapitulate himself as a would-be serial killer. In fact, fact, he wants to be caught, and he wants to almost like justice to come in this fucked up way through the vehicle, what he's had to do in his life, because I feel like people don't know everything with that is not, that character, nothing in it is a red herring. It is all a Chekhov's gun. It is all something that is real, that relates to the case, but your preconception of both those characters with how you're shown them initially, how weird they are, the fact they want to get away, the fact they won't talk about what's going on, they're obviously lying, that gives you a million false narratives. I agree with you. The real problem is this. If you're watching this film, you are watching it from Kellen Dover's perspective largely. And so since you're getting this information in a way where you're going to jump to conclusions, even though in the end you are wrong, even though they sort of make it work out, how could you perceive these things differently? Like, how really could you stop and go, this guy's weird and creepy? Well, let me think, what else could it be? No, because you're so desperate for it to be what you want it to be, that he is the guy. He is involved in this case. And like I say, we can get to it later, but man alive, the amount of clues when you stack them on the second rewatch is incredible. The amount of things that seem, like I say, they're just like, oh, that never went anywhere. It did, but it just didn't want to like germinate that seed just yet. It was planting it now, and later on it's going to blossom, like the priest thing, like all those lines that are dropped that eventually, when, that's Monty says, when that line hits about the war against God, like the whole thing just comes to the fore, and you realize all those things were just layered throughout the movie. It's a mega dense movie.
Yeah.
And it's rife with symbolism as well. Like we talked a little bit about some of the Christian stuff. One of the things I don't like about this movie is some of the symbolism is kind of a dead end, which like always bums me out because I want to have those little nuggets sprinkled in there. So for example, like Jake Gyllenhaal's character, Detective Loki. So first off, I know Norse mythology very well. There's not very much Loki-like about his character, or the actions that happen are not really tied to any kind of Loki mythology. I think the important thing is that he's a pagan god. And so, what's interesting about it is that Dover's character is implied at the end is saved by a pagan god after praying to Christian god. So that's kind of just an interesting, I'm not sure it really goes anywhere. He also is wearing like a Freemason ring on his thumb, and he has astrological symbols tattooed on his knuckles, which also doesn't
the beginning in that restaurant, he does the Chinese zodiac when he's talking to the waitress. He's interested in that sort of thing. He writes everything. He's the non-Christian figure. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So he's got all of this stuff on him, but it kind of doesn't go anywhere. One of the things that I think does go somewhere in this is the labyrinth idea. Yep. Because if you guys don't know, the original story in Greek mythology of the labyrinth is that children are being sent to Crete. So the Minotaur is this horrible monster that has been imprisoned within the labyrinth to contain it. And the labyrinth was built by Daedalus, who's Icarus' father.
The Minotaur is actually partially the son of the person who constructed it. It's all there. The symbology is all there.
So it was his wife banged a bull.
Well, she fucked a bull. Yeah. True.
Yeah. So it's not. It's not related to the King of Crete,
well,
but
it's
anyway,
his adopted son in this scenario too.
Yeah, but anyway, the important part about the labyrinth is that basically there was a war between Athens and Crete, and as part of this war, this is the very simple version of this, guys. They are required to send children to Crete to be eaten by the Minotaur in the center of the labyrinth. And that's where Theseus shows up and then goes in with the help of Ariadne, who, famously gives him the string basically to trace his way back to the labyrinth, kills the Minotaur and escapes the labyrinth. But, this is basically the entire story of the labyrinth is about the abduction and destruction of children, which is very much this film, right? And so the labyrinth metaphor is super apt and was obviously, I think, chosen by the perpetrators because not only do we have this like pagan versus Christian dichotomy within the show or within this film, but that is where the central characters, right, the Jones family, in their war against God, they say they used to be devout until their son died of cancer, at which point in time they decided that they hated God and that their war against God, and I think this is so interesting, is basically to abduct children, which then turns their parents into monsters who turn away from God. So effectively, they're trying to make people not Christian by abducting or killing children.
Making children disappear is the war we wage with God. Makes people lose their faith. Turns them into demons like you.
The most famous narrative in the West, even though actually I think I've transcended this, but whatever, we can all blow our own horns. It's the idea of like, if God's real, then why do bad things happen to good people, man? Like that's the ultimate fucking thing of the Western dilemma of God, isn't it? It's like when the bad thing happens to you, shouldn't that be what you take strength from? Is that, you know, there's a way through this all, but instead what they do is you blame God because the bad thing happened to you, whereas you thought, like the Job story, you thought that because you're holy and you follow God, that bad things will never happen to you. So you're right, Monty. What they do is they try to show that everyone would turn away from God if they had the worst thing happen to them. So they're enacting that, which, by the way, they don't explore what that means at the end, but the implication is that fucking bonkers. Because if you don't know, by the way, that's actually, without going down too deep a rabbit hole, one of the actual things that people do speculate behind why in real life people might have some sort of like ritualized abduction of children is the notion that these people are on some of like Satanists or like doesn't have to be Christian God, but anti like God and the life force. It's the idea of what's the most evil thing you could do in this realm. It's to take the innocent child and to subject it to the worst horrors, because in that way you're sort of showing that like, look, if there's a God, why doesn't he stop me? It's that sort of an angle too, right?
Yeah. I think as well, I mean, one of the things that I really like about the movie is, and it might be a little bit on the nose, but I don't give a fuck, I like it anyway, is that obviously when you review the title, Prisoners, you are, oh, well, it's initially the girls, and then you go, but it isn't, but it's like, it's Paul Dano, and it's like, oh, no, and then it's the girls, oh, and then Hugh Jackman is a prisoner at the end, so Prisoners. It's like, no, it's about everyone is fucking locked in their own fucking thing, you know, like the obvious ones are Alex Jones is obviously a prisoner, you know, he's got the fucking IQ of a 10-year-old, he's trapped inside his own mind, he's been a literal prisoner, you know, he's of abuse, but every character is kind of like locked in as well. Like Loki is, you know, he's an orphan trying to kind of like be a force for good in the world, and all that entails. I think the name Loki implies that like it's a coin toss. You know, Loki, yeah, he's not just the trickster god, but also Loki could go either way on any issue. He could.
He's sometimes very helpful. He's sometimes
exactly.
Chaotic piece of shit who ruins everything, and he does cause Ragnarok in the end. He is the trigger for Ragnarok. Yes. So
he certainly is, but he dies in Ragnarok as well. So it's all okay. Everyone best thing about Ragnarok in a way. But you know, so there's that, and then obviously what's her name? The mother, Holly Jones, well, she's a prisoner of grief. You know, her own husband becomes a fucking deranged pedophile, and she enters into it as a willing participant in the abductions and all of that stuff. There's also the priest.
Turns out to be super important,
yeah. Who turns out to be super important.
And even though as I said earlier, they come across him because they are looking up sex offenders. He's actually one of the better people, surprisingly, by the end of this. He's extremely helpful.
But, I mean, like, as horrific as it is, and, you know, we won't get into some kind of, you know, Fox News meditation on what crimes can and can't be forgiven by society. But this is a guy who, he's, again, leading this isolated, lonely life, who actually does turn out to do something good, even though he was a fucking molester priest. And so the complexities of all of the characters that are kind of in this film, it's very, very dense. And so you're not going to get any easy answers. That's how the movie ultimately tricks you. You think it's Paul Dano, and then you think, oh, it's the other creepy weirdo. Oh, a pedophile priest. Oh, okay. All right, okay.
Yep.
All right, okay. Now we're cooking. No, wait a minute. And it's gonna pull you all over the place, because life is like that. It's scuffed and flawed, and people are three-dimensional, and ultimately, a lot of the time, we by the time we hit a certain age, we're locked on rails. Very hard to break the programming of experience. There's definitely a lot about that in the movie. You know, Paul Dano is ultimately a broken man. I don't know what turned Keller into the doomsday prepper religious man he is, who turns away from alcohol, but you get the implication he used to be a piece of shit.
Yep.
He used to be a drunk. He used to mistreat his family and found the Bible and made himself a better person. And he believes he would never waver from that. But
I don't think
he just
people
ain't been
will see
tested.
what you're just saying, how subtle that was. Like those scenes where he keeps talking to his son, the way when he
Yep.
talks to his son, there's
Yep.
like almost a threat of like, he used to maybe be the guy who went mental and had like violence.
Yes.
When he tells me, be a man, like you're going to do what I there's a thing where he's channeling. You see this all the time with the people who become the born again character, right? It's like they take that darkness and they channel it into, no, it's all just light now. It's all fucking great now, isn't it? We're all, there's a fucking intimidation behind that I think people will miss. He's not just a strong leader and a father. You're right. There's also a redemptive element. He's trying to redeem himself, even though actually in doing so, in this film, he fucking just casts his soul back into the furnace to me.
Yeah,
Well, it's also
but
all of this is just so giga American as well.
Sure.
I mean, the idea of the born again is so deeply ingrained in American society. The survivalist prepper is so deeply ingrained in American society. Even just I mean, as somebody, now this takes place in Pennsylvania, not from the West, but the mentality as somebody who grew up in the American West of taking things into your own hands and having to do it yourself is so American. Like, you're not going to go looking for help. It's like, I don't trust the authorities. Therefore, I am the unique individual moral arbiter, and I'm just going to go do this shit and get it done is like really American. And so this movie, I know Villeneuve is actually Canadian, which is interesting, but this movie really does have, it's like, especially Dover's character is so quintessentially kind of rural American.
A lot of people have, if you go and look online, a lot of people view this movie as an indictment of religion. I don't know if you guys.
That's strange.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys got that.
No.
As a potential reading, but a lot of people actually feel that ultimately, the movie is speaking about religion in very explicit, like negative tones. Which I understand the reading, but I don't necessarily agree with the conclusion. I think ultimately,
I mean, if anything, the priest you might be able to make an argument was redeemed. By his religion.
Surely that's the one thing. By the way, he himself undertook the act of confession. That's why we got this crew, because a confession was done to him, which is essentially like an inherent aspect of Christianity. The idea of like, you got to get the off your chest. You've got to say what you've done that's wrong to start the process of doing what's right. Right. Basically, in this scenario, like him getting the confession of the guy who turns out to be the dad of the Manson family, as it were, in this scenario. Who, by the way, all that information is straight fire. So the priest even says earlier on he was waging a war against God. Then they go and they have that guy pull him into the police station, and then that guy goes, "Hey, I've got some great info for you." And he goes, "Tell them about how he took the kids. He took them in daylight, and he had a family with him." And you're just going, "It's a fucking wasted time." Like Jake Gyllenhaal, like that's super important. Him himself confessing this. You could argue, why would he do that, Monty, if it wasn't for religion? If he was just a piece of shit beggar, why ever say anything? Why not just go to the grave with it? In fact, if you want your own war against God, you'd never help them.
I'm gonna do you one better. I actually think, if anything, it's very affirming about the importance of earnestness when it comes to engaging with your faith. I think that message, for me at least, makes more sense, because you look at Keller Dover as a character, right? So first of all, I would go so far as to say there's, he's portrayed at the start as a survivalist, and therefore, what does that mean? Well, a survivalist is a man that doesn't need anything else. It's a man who doesn't need faith to sustain them. They don't need to rely on God. And he even says at the start of the movie, he says, pray for the best, but prepare for the worst, right? That's like the phrase he's telling his son. But that is actually his own. It's a blasphemy. He's saying, we pray for these things, but always prepare for the worst, because prayers don't get answered. That's what he's saying. So, okay, you fast forward it a little bit. He's pissed off with the police at the start. Remember, big cause of the conflict is him and Detective Loki, and he's like, you delayed the case. You fucking did, if you'd been there earlier and had done these things that I said, and if you hadn't investigated me, this would have all been fine. And now I got to take the matters into my own hands. And then he does. And what does he do before he tortures Paul Dano? He's saying the Lord's Prayer again, like he does with the deer at the start, but he misses out the line about forgive those who trespass against us. He isn't even being fully committed to his own doctrine. And then at the end, when he's juiced up on LSD, stuck in a pit, broken fucking bones, thinks he's going to die, he prays. And it's sincere. And that is what leads to him being found and saved.
Almighty God, protect my girl.
So, look, I think you can actually read it the exact opposite as, a lot of internet commentators have viewed it as. For me, it's saying something about if you don't engage with your faith earnestly, the faith will not reward you. And equally true of a family who didn't turn to God in grief, they went to war with God in grief.
Yeah.
They wanted to undermine other people's faith by torturing kids.
I think if anything, it's not an indictment of Christianity. It's just an indictment of insincere religious faith.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
They're just hypocrites.
Yeah. Exactly. And there is another interesting aspect of that with Loki is this kind of like I say, he's like much like his namesake. He's kind of ambivalent. He's a police officer who sort of doesn't play by the rules. He fucks up. He fails a bunch in this movie. He gets someone killed because he doesn't secure his gun properly in an interrogation, and they're able to get it and shoot themselves. That could have tanked the entire thing. He's flawed, but he's trying. And, I think it's interesting. A lot of 1800s theologians, they viewed Loki as kind of almost like kind of a Lucifer specifically, a Lucifer character. And, I think that's kind of way off base. I think, again, what the Loki serves here is Loki is earnestly trying and is flawed and will fail, but he has a belief system that is propelling him forward, and he gets the results that earnestness deserves. And everybody else who isn't being earnest, they get the things that they deserve. So, yeah, there's definitely a commentary there about the nature of what it is to engage with faith and ultimately salvation, I would say, as well. But, I didn't read this as a movie that hates religion or anything like that.
By the way, I'd even say on the Loki angle, if people don't know the mythology, the reason why that's an obvious thing people played within shit like stupid cape movies, etc., it's because the dynamic's a great one, isn't it? It's essentially like an adoptive child. The point is, Loki comes from the enemies of the Asgardians, but when you're raised as one of their own, eventually can't familial ties overtake your background? That's the question of this character, right? And so even though he essentially is like your enemy, in some ways he is also the brother of these people and an adoptive son and stuff. That's why in some ways, yes, he does have a redemptive aspect where essentially it's also like there's a classic one, if people don't know, in the Superman mythos like that, which is that Lex Luthor wants to kill Superman, right? But some of the best what-if stories in the Superman universe are where someone kills or attempts to kill Superman, and it makes Lex Luthor go mental because he was the one that was going to kill Superman. So then suddenly he becomes the good guy and rescues them in the same way, like you can obviously have the Joker can help Batman in the odd one. I know obviously the movies have ruined all this shit and made it super black and white, but actually this is a dynamic that they were always playing. It was never just that you're evil, etc. By the way, I'd even say that's actually the aspect where Keller Dover fails in his faith, which is he becomes God, he becomes the judge, he has black and white morality, and when he has judged you to be evil or a bad guy, you are a bad guy, and because of that he is allowed to do anything he wants to you because it's necessitated, because he's ultimate good. He's trying to get his daughter back, and that's all it's all about.
We hurt him until he talks, or they're gonna die. No. We hurt him until he talks, or they're gonna die. That's the choice.
even though I also say I think the prepper angle plays into this too. He's a guy that clearly what he likes about the fact he's not an alcoholic now is he has control now. Now
That's
he
the
is in charge of
implication,
everything.
yes,
And the
yeah.
second he's not in control, he fucking wigs out. And that's why he has to assert control if that means lock you in a torture chamber and fucking spray you with hot steam, for example. Like whatever he has to do to get the control back. It's why I agree with you, Monty. The most brilliant aspect is the angle that like he's even like crying as he does it. Like even he's sort of like, don't make me do it. It's like, who is making you do this?
I know, it's so ridiculous.
You're making yourself do this. Yeah, that guy isn't doing it. That's a crazy projection. That by the way, that's also the ultimate fucking narcissist angle, isn't it? Don't make me do this to you. It's like, what are you talking about, bro?
Think about what we do for a living and how many times have we encountered people who've like pretty much said that shit, you know? Yeah, don't make me do it. I'm making you do anything. You know? But like, yeah, it's his sin is obviously pride and hubris in a sort of classical reading, which is another aspect to this, I think, which is interesting.
Which, if anything, the Christian religion literally speaks against. Like, actually, that's the area where, I mean, I would say at the end of the movie, he isn't a Christian anymore. He's become, I mean, he's even, by the way, completely denied the premise of any afterlife or eternal soul by his actions. It's only about getting them in the physical world now back into your house as your literal daughter. By the way, we've pointed out you can never recreate that world. He doesn't know that he's destroyed the world to get his daughter back. Well, mate, what is the whole foundation of the Christian religion? He gave his only son to the world. Like, no, this is like if God was like, I'm going to destroy the world to keep my son. It's like, you missed the whole point, mate. That was the opposite.
That was Old Testament God.
Yeah, you know how like there's this concept. It is still there in the New Testament. I mean, again, I'll defer to Duncan on this one. I haven't read the Bible in a fucking long time, but I've read it multiple times, and it's a good read actually. No shit. There's this recurring concept in Christianity across both the Old Testament and the New Testament about being tested and how will you behave when you are tested.
Go through the rundown like fucking Job, fucking Isaac and Abraham, fucking Sodom and Gomorrah. It's constantly that.
It's that ultimately, and again, you see, I understand a lot of people view the Bible literally. I think if you just read the Bible allegorically, I know it's not a popular opinion with a lot of people, but I think if you read it allegorically, it actually has a lot of profound things to say. But anyway, so look, there's this recurring concept of being tested in the Bible. Right. And he was tested. He had his child abducted by someone who specifically says to him, we do this to turn people into demons. That's explicitly what Holly Jones says. It is our war on God. And this is how we war with God, because obviously we can't kill God. We can't make God bleed. We can't hurt God. Right. But we can turn normal folk, God-fearing folk, into demons, and that's what happens to him. He fails,
which is the opposite of the Abraham Isaac story, right?
Yes, and so in that moment, it's like it's that classic, Christian test. The abduction of his. It's another reason why I think it's actually good that the kid comes back. It's the final you failed as a Christian. Ultimately, it's like look, your kid was fine the whole time. And you became a demon for what? None of your actions brought your child back. I think a lot of people say it's very heavy-handed, the religious imagery in this film, but I know I think it's actually.
I thought it was fine. I thought it was good. I thought that's one of the better parts of it, honestly.
Yes, I agree. I think it elevates the material. I think it's very smart, and I think if you are a religious or spiritual person, it will give you extra pause for thought at the end.
By the way, I've got an angle as well. It's a psychological angle, if people don't know, for the character at the end, the Holly Jones one, because you're going to think to yourself, like, what the fuck? Why would someone who had that happen to them go and do it to other people? And obviously, you're going to get lost if you don't care about Christianity and like the Christianity, the war against God. There's actually a psychological process that takes place. It's, by the way, it's how every supervillain and superhero comes to be formed in the best stories. It goes like this. When the horrible thing happens to you, your parents get killed, your planet explodes or whatever. There's two ways you can go. Because the world, the external, did something fucked up to you, you can either go, holy shit, that was terrible. I don't want that to happen to anyone else. I'm now going to protect people, prevent these things, stop it, reclaim people, save people. Or you can go, the external world did this to me. I'm going to fuck up the external world. I'm going to go and hurt other people and do that. And it's like that. It's the same exact thing happens to you, but it's that response to it. It's why in the modern day, it was so easy to shade in grey elements to villains. You just have to give them a believable reason as to why they became a villain. Like you have had some Joker character get fucked up and abused by people, and to the point that like eventually they snap, but in a way where it's like it's not out of nowhere. It wasn't for no reason. They weren't a character, which is the terrible type of villain. It's just like, I am evil. I like Skeletor. Like, I'm just an evil cunt. Lol, just doing this because fuck y'all. Like, that's not a very believable character. That doesn't really, you can't engage with it. It's 2D. But what you do is you put in this idea that like, and couldn't anyone in the wrong circumstances, down on their luck with the wrong situation, and then no one to help them, couldn't we all have the wrong thing happen to us and we turn, not necessarily evil, but we turn cynical or jaded or fucked up, or we wouldn't want and wish well to others. In fact, misery loves company. We'd want everyone else in a way to suffer too, wouldn't we? Fuck, why doesn't everyone else get their shit taken away? It's like, if people don't know, I know a little bit about this. One of the things about Eastern European people as to why they often come off as very dour because of what communism did to them and how it broke them down and atomized them and destroyed any hope that there was possibility to escape and have good things and to succeed and to achieve things and have even a real family. Wasn't your family. Those were other comrades as part of a socialist revolution, and they actually were all required to inform on you and to serve the state. They're the state's children, not yours. One of the things it did to people was it made it so that then people had this mentality, and I've often heard it in many of the dark jokes, and it goes like this. The famous joke goes, if someone said to you, right, you have one wish, but the trick is whatever happens in the wish, it happens twice as much to your neighbour. You're supposed to go in the West, I want to be a billionaire. Fuck it, let him have 2 billion or a billion times a billion. And I'll have the billion. No, their joke is, in that case, I hope one of my sheep dies. Because their premise is then fuck him, let 2 of his die. And if you can get that mentality, that's what that character did. That's how she turned. She had her choice. She could go the good way. She could have been a hero after that. She could have freed all these people. She could have stopped her husband. She didn't. She went the evil way, and she just started perpetrating the evil to the world. It's not as crazy a concept as you think. That's why I think the best villains, you could understand that, like, in the wrong timeline, down the wrong alley, down the wrong thing, you could maybe have gone that way. You could see how it's possible to become like that.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And, you know, there's for all the fantastical aspects to this, because it is very decadent in its presentation. It's very rich, you know. There's the recurring imagery of the maze. There's the biblical metaphors. There's recurring motifs throughout the movie, even baked into the title, as I said earlier. I get it. Like, you know, it could come across as a bit too much, but I think there is a believability to it.
Yeah.
I mean, as an
genuinely
American, I
feel-
find this story highly believable.
Yeah,
maybe,
right.
maybe it's just
Like,
because maybe people like who are not as familiar with America or Americans, like, it feels like a very real American story to me, an American.
yeah. No, I mean, I put it this way. Obviously not an American, but lived out there and always been fascinated with the American lifestyle and American culture and American politics. It just seems to be so believable. Like, you can strip away the window dressing, but the story is, if you told me this story on the news that like some girls got abducted and a dude fucking kidnapped a guy and then tortured him horribly, and then it turned out he wasn't the killer, and now the father is in prison, and then you've got fucking Rush Limbaugh or someone going, it's goddamn outrage, he was doing what he thought was best for his children.
I know,
And,
it's
you
so
know,
giga American, isn't it?
yeah, like it's so just you're there, you're watching
Yeah.
the news right now.
I
You're
agree.
you're tweeting about it right now. Which opinion you would have in that discussion? So it's very well anchored. It's very well grounded as a movie, despite how decadent and how rich it is. And I like that it does include the procedural aspects. I like that it includes, I mean, the end. Well, one of the penultimate scenes when Loki actually gets the girl. and is driving her through high-speed traffic. Like, again, unbelievably powerful scene. As he's like taking a limp, fucking drugged body into the emergency ward.
Stay with me, Anna. It's all right. It's all right. Come on.
It's like it's just another fucking perfect blend of highbrow conceptualization, literary tropes, religious iconography, and then just a slice of life drama.
And on top of that, I think we should talk about some of the craftsmanship behind this film too, because we've talked basically entirely about the characters and the acting and the plot, but I don't think
one last plot point. One last plot point.
Do it.
This is the one that's gonna you're even probably gonna miss it when you rewatch it. This is the one that everyone misses. There's actually they leave open one thing they don't explicitly tell you, which is the Bob Taylor character, that weird one who was the one who himself had escaped. Right? If you remember, there's a story where the reason he's obsessed with the mazes is because there's an FBI agent who wrote a book called Finding the Invisible Man, and it was about how there was this person abducting children like that, and he'd made these mazes if you could solve them, but they were intentionally unfinished, and the guy was like obsessed with them. That'd help you find where the bodies were. And so this guy, who it turns out himself was abducted like that, decides, well, I was done by that. Now you're supposed to or maybe think that's a red herring. He just took his own trauma and said, right, I've read a famous book. No, because here's the part they don't explicitly tell you. That maze thing's on the pendant of the guy that you find. It's inferred that the FBI guy was doing the Jake Gyllenhaal years earlier. He just couldn't get to the end of it. He couldn't solve the maze. Like, this movie, for real, guys, when you stack the references that are going to come to play and how every character, literally every character who appears on screen, they all weaves in the plot. It's all the same thing that they're viewing from a different side. Like that famous story of the wise men and the elephant, where one was touching the ear and he goes, an elephant is kind of like thin and wrinkly, and then one was touching the tail, it's kind of long and it's got a bit of hair on it, and one's touching the nose, no, it's got like a thing, and they're all grasping at parts of the same overall thing, but they can't see the totality, and they think they're doing different things. So like that element, in fact, like I say, the actual, like, again, the script writing in this is fucking, it's amazing, because you can take it as just as police procedural, you can take it as just it's a ham-fisted allegory for Christianity, or the Americans and the prepper. You can do all those things. It's all there, but there's also like a really clever thing, which I'm telling you, there's no plot holes in this one. They actually, whoever wrote this script nailed this fucker down and polished all the rough edges of it. It's really well done. It's really well done.
Well, one of the things that I really like about it as well is it's very, like, as you point out with that, it's very realistic, unfortunately, in the sense that one of the things that genuinely shocked me when I started reading about, true crime, American police work, serial killers, it's actually terrifying how many people get away with it.
Oh,
for
of course.
For as long as they
just
do.
As they say with the bodies, Richard, they claim basically after like a certain amount of time, if they haven't got you, they'll never find you. It's like they claim it's like nearly always the first person they bring in. It's either him or it's no one. You're never going to get him.
And if you've when it really fucking hit me is when I read the David Simon book Homicide.
The guy who did The Wire. If you don't know.
Yeah. So he did prior to doing The Wire. I think it was like 89 and 90. Between 89 and 90, he spent he was like bedded in with the Baltimore Homicide Unit, and the book begins with a killing of an 11-year-old girl called LaTonya Wallace, and they find her body just out in the street next to a dumpster, raining. And the detective is assigned, and it goes into all this detail about the forensic stuff. And very quickly it builds up, like where she went, who she saw, where she was from. The rain had took away a lot of the forensic stuff. And back then, late 80s, forensic wasn't great anyway, But anyway, they establish suspects very quickly. And they pull them in, and they interrogate them. And the book is a whole year. And by the end, they can't pin it on anyone. And it haunts the detective. And the main suspect dies of natural causes. They never get anyone for that killing of that 11-year-old girl. And I remember getting to the end of that book, and I was always sure there was going to be like, okay, there's only like 20 pages left, but they're not gonna put. No, of course, that's real life. That's how it is, and that's what that's what I love about this little detail that somebody's been out there doing this repeatedly. Alex Jones is in plain sight of everyone, not even the same kid, not even Alex Jones, right? But that's just the brutal truth about these types of crimes that unfortunately they can really go unaccounted for, and that's terrifying, I think. And there's an aspect of this that is genuinely horrifying. Duncan might be right in a sense that the ending might just be a little bit too nice compared to real life, because he's probably right. The kids just turn up dead, and it's just horrible.
Also, put it this way, I don't mind the idea that you could get it back, but the part I did find almost was like, that's Hollywood. It's like when she like rushes to inject him with like the heroin overdose or whatever. It's like the way like they just barely survive to get there as he's like swerving through traffic. That just felt like you took it a bit too far there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, don't make it so high stakes if you get away with it at the end. Because to get away, I agree. I know what you mean though. It definitely does impact on the Hugh Jackman character's actions that he does get the daughter back, but for what?
Well,
Yeah,
also,
exactly.
I mean, even the very end too, with the whistle part, where we know that he could have just died in that hole of that gunshot wound. And I don't think.
Oh, the idea you even find him like, oh, what's that sound last
what's
second?
that whistle at the end? It's kind of
No,
weak.
but let me tell you why I like that. Let me tell you why I'm going to tell you why I like that. A survivalist is brought so low after having his epiphany of faith in the drug hole that he's reliant on someone else to dig him out. He's not the independent man. He can't conquer all things. He's about to learn probably the most profound lesson he's ever about to learn shortly before going to prison, potentially for a long, long time. So I like it. I like the fact that he's desperately whistling and it's going to be fucking Loki that's going to dig him out.
The thing, though, I would have liked the ending to have been a bit more ambiguous because in my opinion, they overplay the whistleblowing thing. Like if you hear it once and then Loki kind of just like cocks his head, you don't know whether he actually heard it. Whereas it's like whistle, and he's like, and it's like whistle, 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 and he's like.
And what I will give you is they definitely did that because they knew there were a bunch of people in the audience who aren't like us, don't think about these things deeply, and they're going, but. You can't let Hugh die in a hole. So
I want it to be more ambiguous, but whatever.
Even though he tortured that fucking person with special needs for 2 hours. We still want him to get out the hole.
It's Hugh Jackman though, bro. Yeah, exactly. There's that vibe at all.
There is that guy out there, isn't there? So, but look, ultimately, little bits like that, whatever. It's still great.
I was minorly annoyed, but it didn't ruin the movie for me or anything. Let's talk about some of the craftsmanship, like quickly. Because I mean, we do. I think have to talk about the cinematography because Roger Deakins did this, and he's a fucking legend. He's done 3 films with Villeneuve, including winning an Academy Award for Blade Runner 2049. But he's done 12 films with the Coen brothers. He's been nominated 16 times. He's done a bunch of work with Sam Mendes. Like basically every Coen brothers film that you've seen in like the last 30 years. He's done cinematography for, but it really works in this film. And it is one thing that we touched on this with Arrival, but Villeneuve's use of color is really outstanding in this film because I'm not sure anybody does cloudy, overcast, like monochrome days better than Villeneuve. It really feels bleak in a lot of his films. Even in Dune, where everything's kind of this sandy orange color, it still feels overcast and bleak a lot of the time. Bleakness is his jam. Even in Arrival, when they're doing those big helicopter shots over and around where the alien ship lands, it feels kind of cold and bleak.
Yes.
In the open green fields. And in this film too, the primary color palettes, if you watch some of the scenes, you're looking at, it's like a candlelight film. Like it's sepia at times, where at the candle, it's like every scene is a candlelight vigil. Like they have the candlelight vigil scene, but then it's every other scene, even inside Holly Jones's house, everything is this kind of like golden, like honey brown color, including even the set dressing. So all the objects, her teapot, her pots in the background, like her crockery, her pottery is all the same honey brown. It's really beautiful to look at. And then they do visual symbolism as well. One of the biggest, one of the most recurring shots in this film is of people in doorways. So it'll be a shot of standing beyond the doorway, and you're looking into the doorway, and it makes it feel like a labyrinth when you're watching it. It's shot as if you're looking through a labyrinth, and you're going through all of these hallways, whether it's in the apartment building that's owned by his dad, or it's just like, here's a shot of a character inside another room, but you're looking through the doorway, so part of the frame is obstructed by the walls on the other side of the door. It's very interesting and very unique to this film.
Yeah, and it's clearly I'm saying clearly. I don't know enough about the artistry of cinematography to know this, but it looks to me like they've done some form of like desaturate, like something to the color palette, because like you say, it's pretty much all browns and grays and steely blues, and it's very drab and dour, which is kind of interesting because the fucking the clothes are pink.
Yeah, and also her room is pink too. There's actually an entire scene with Dover and his son in his daughter's room where the entire light is pink. Like the entire shot is just this kind of gray. It's like a cold pink though. It's like cold gray pink. It's weird.
But it's still very out of place, because if you think about where those colors are used, like you say, in the room, in the evidence bag with the clothes, at that weirdo's house, in the mall. When they go and they find out about the weirdo who comes in and touches up the mannequins or whatever the fuck he's doing. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition, isn't it? Like the cold, steely, drab reality of adulthood and the sort of, precocious innocence of childhood represented through a color palette, which is kind of good. But I mean, the movie, it's one of those where, because it's so compelling a story and you're drawn in immediately, and the acting is so good and the drama is so good and the characters are so interesting and the situation's so immediate, you will probably need to watch it a second time to really appreciate what's going on the screen. But it's actually a really good looking movie too.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I mean, Roger Deakins, just the number of insanely good films he's done cinematography for. Here is a limited list, guys. Like A Beautiful Mind, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? No Country for Old Men.
Well, where I know
Sicario,
him from,
our next film, is by him, is cinematography by him as well.
Where I know him from is the 1984 adaptation with John Hurt, which was, again, British actors adapting 1984, released in 1984. And I don't think it's a fantastic adaptation, but I think it looks fucking mega. It really holds up. It nails the tone of what Orwell was going for with the world he was building.
Oh, it makes it all like flat and grey and everything. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he really understands how to bring these worlds to life with things like, framing and color palette and all this other stuff.
By the way, since Monty referenced Coen Brothers, obviously the man who wasn't there, the one that's just completely in black and white, but it's like super stylized the way it's done. By the way, there's another aspect I realized we didn't get into, which is obviously the performance that is the sleeper is the fucking Holly Jones actress, right? Because think about this part of the plot. This is where, when you rewatch it, you will also see a different character on screen than you were seeing, and it was both were there at the same time. When you first encounter the Holly Jones character, after Hugh Jackman's begun torturing that guy, you're feeling really sorry for her. You're feeling like, oh fuck, this is like, she doesn't know it, but her like fucking kid or whatever is being wrecked by that guy. Hermione isn't even, well, we don't know the scenario whether he did it or not. Like, we don't know if she's like, we assume she's completely none the wiser whether he was a serial killer or he did all this. She just thinks he's gone and she hopes he'll come back, right? She even comes off, by the way, this is why you feel so bad when Jake Gyllenhaal's there. She even comes off as though actually she's kind of a comforting character. She's not sinister at all until she has the "we wage war against God" speech. And she even herself almost gives off like a Christian charity, because she's almost that sort of thing of like, and I understand it's hard for you as well, and we're all going through. So like the way that when you rewatch it, you see, like I say, the way she's like controlling and handling the Alex Jones character, and the way she's actually just she's just toying with these fuckers when they come see her. She's giving off this image that she's just with big glasses and like want to say it's almost like she lives in the 1970s when you're in her house. She's not in the future like the rest of us all in the modern day. Like she's in some old timey world where of course she couldn't ever be anyone sinister. You never, of all the people in the film, you never imagine her to be a vector for evil, or the idea she's the ringleader. Remember, even the whole thing of the husband, guys, you're searching for the main person who's doing this, and by the way, you always assume it's a man. From day one, it's a classic thing. People never assume a woman would abuse a child, would be a paedophile, would it be any of those things? It's automatically assumed women have like the nurturing instinct. They wouldn't cross that line, would they? So I also think as a reveal for a bad guy, it's pretty fucking sick, because essentially everyone that it could have been, it wasn't. And then it's just like kindly older lady who then just turns insanely sinister and then out of nowhere. Because remember, it's also inferred she's not only going to still kill your daughter, now she's going to fucking put you through the ringer too. She's fucking mad dark as a villain.
Drink it, Mr. Dover. Or I'll kill you right here in my kitchen and bring your daughter in here and have her scrub your brains off the floor. Drink.
Oh, for sure. And she's a really good gigging actor as well. I've seen her in so many things, and I just can't.
She won an Academy
remember any of
Award for
them.
The Fighter.
Yeah,
She was the mom in The Fighter.
That's right. She was in 21 Grams as well, I think.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time. Has that held up? That feels like that one probably sucks now.
I haven't watched that probably since its theatrical release.
I have a feeling that didn't age very well.
I had a man crush on Sean Penn till he turned into this version of Sean Penn.
He was a mega at one point in time, yeah.
Yeah, for real, dude. Like he fucking, from Carlito's Way onwards. Yeah, I was locked in. But yeah, she's done a bunch of stuff. I'm actually sad I can't remember them all. But yeah, she's one of those actors that'll do like half a dozen films a year, and she's in them, and she's really good in everything. And it's like you just. You don't remember her, but she's there. And she definitely, as I said, everyone's swinging for the fences in this film. I mean, everyone's really, really good.
Excellent movie. I'm really glad I watched this. And I hope you guys too, because this was my first time watching it, and I thought it was fucking great. I really enjoyed it.
Well, just quickly, right? Because I can tell we're about to wrap up. A bit of sad news. Roger Ebert.
He was dead.
And he agreed with us for
released.
Once. Oh, right. You couldn't shot it, right. Okay.
The sad news is Roger Ebert never got to see Prisoners because he died in 2013. He died in April 2013. And this was released, I don't know, like late 2013, right? So he never got to see it. But his website did review it. Right?
So, but okay.
in many ways, we can still hold him accountable.
Come on, what did he do? Come on.
For his opinions.
Outrageous.
And
you know what we need? We need to bring a hologram Roger Ebert onto our show. I'm gonna
guess. I didn't look it up. I'm already gonna guess they do something like give it like 2 out of 4. So come on, hit me with it.
So 2.5.
Fuck these two guys.
I know.
Yeah, I know, right?
I know.
So
well, to be fair, they keep his legacy going, Richard. Like,
exactly. Yeah. No, Sheila O'Malley, who wrote the review, knew exactly what Roger would have done. Right. And I will just read you the last paragraph from the review because it just is so divorced from everything we've said. It's actually kind of funny. The director Villeneuve gives us a couple of truly suspenseful scenes. One is a chase through a nighttime backyard of the neighborhood after a candlelit vigil for the two girls. That scene is mega, by the way. It's fantastic. The interiors of the house seem gloomy and cramped, with walls cutting into the frame and characters coming in and out of sight. Exactly what Monty was talking about with the labyrinthian style. A visual correlative for the idea of people cut off from one another. But as the plot goes into high gear and we get multiple suspects, basement lairs, and a glimpse of vast conspiracies, Prisoners wears out its welcome. That's Sheila O'Malley there.
Great writing. Doesn't even tell me how it wears out its welcome, by the way.
Channeling Roger Ebert from Beyond the Grave.
He's in the room, innit?
Yeah, exactly. No, her that last paragraph, her opinion is terrible. This film doesn't outstay its welcome, which, considering it's like 2.5 hours, would have been very easy for it to do. I actually find myself when I watch this film, and again, it's another one I have rewatched. I don't want to say on an annual basis, but biannual. Yeah, actually, I probably do watch this movie once every couple of years. It flies along. It flies along, and it flies along because the script remains interesting. The visuals are interesting. The allegories are interesting. The performances are stellar. And the story is compelling. And even when you know how it's going to end, the scenes are so emotionally high-strung. And Hugh Jackman is so good. You are just brought into it again. The tension feels very real. So no, this isn't a movie that outstays its welcome. It's actually a really underappreciated film, and it should get way more plaudits than it does. I don't know why it doesn't. I think probably, if I had to take a guess, like a lot of things in American media, it's probably because, as Monty rightly points out, it's distinctly American in almost every way, but then it just does this crazy highbrow shit, and they don't like it. It's why Deadwood got cancelled. Deadwood
Dude,
is
this movie is like
America.
this movie is like if every shitty Liam Neeson like action thriller actually was art.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, listen, well, what's that one he did? What was it?
Taken?
Fucking Walk Amongst the Graveyard?
I don't even know what that one is.
A Walk Among the Tombstones or something. And they're really trying to make it high up, but it is just Liam going, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you again. You're right. It's like, this is the highest... Not the highest, but a very high elevation of the police procedural story. And
which is weird because everybody raved about True Detective Season 1 a year after this film was released. But this is like the harbinger of True Detective.
Yeah, it's got aspects of that in the sense that it has that gritty realism. It's well, you can't even say it's unflinchingly dark, because Duncan is right. There's a version of this film where the kids just die. And I don't know if it's a better movie or not. But, listen, there's a case for a remake. There's a case for a remake. Prisoners, the dark version where the kids just die and Paul Dano did it. And gets away. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, for me, I agree. I think there are a lot of police procedurals that get way too much credit, and then there's movies like this that don't get enough.
I'll go one further and take that line. Like the idea it outstayed its welcome. It's the opposite. It will live forever in your head after you've watched this film. If Monty's only watched it once, you just get ready, mate. The rewatch is even better.
I'm never going to forget this. I will definitely watch this again.
Like I say, once you see all the little pieces that you can put together yourself and see how, like I say, it's so cleverly done that they were never tricking you, mate. They were always telling you the clues, but how you saw them and your way of perceiving them is what led you to think it was nonsense. So one of the things I think is amazing about this film is I remember both times I watched it thinking, like, especially the first time, I remember thinking, shouldn't this movie have actually ended, but in a way where, like, I don't want it to end, but it has to end now, surely. Like, think about when he's already been torturing him for, like, weeks, and the others have all given up. It's just him torturing him in this, like, CIA black site, as it were. And then, you know, at this point, now this plot points are like, right, now Jake Gyllenhaal's going to catch that he's an alcoholic doing it, and obviously the end's just going to be him getting arrested, isn't it? It's going to end like that. There's no way you're ever going to find the girls. Now, that's already gone. Now it's just about you exacting your punishment on this Paul Dano guy that you think did it, right? That's all you've got left. At that point, by the way, you're about like half of the way through the movie, or like 2/3. Like, there's still like a fucking hour to go at this point. And by the way, you're going to love that there's an hour to go. And even better, like, you're going to think, like, I can't believe it actually eventually does turn into all those things I thought were dead ends. Like, look, even Jake Gyllenhaal can't find anything. It's basically over. It's basically just a guy exacting revenge now. No, that it all was leading somewhere. In the end, the payoff is there. And as I said, the main line is when they say they're waging war on God. And then if you remember that was what the guy said it was in given confession and tortured in the basement.
He was waging a war against God.
Great. It's great.
Suddenly the whole thing, it wasn't just like it wasn't, by the way, torture porn. It wasn't just about watching someone it wasn't like some of those movies we might one day have to watch, like fucking Martyrs and stuff. Well, I do think some of that's you're just showing what the most horrible shit you can see on screen. It's like watching Rotten.com back in the day when you were a kid. Like, I can't wait to get the heads cut off. Like, there's a pornography to that where you're just seeing the most horrible shit you can see. That everything is in a way justified in the sense of what they're trying to do with the plot in this film. So I think it's a brilliant film. As I said, I actually think Arrival is an incredible sci-fi film, but I think this is the guy's magnum opus. I think this is the best film that Villeneuve did, and it's fucking fire.
Yeah, and I also suspect, even though it did commercially well, I talked about this on our what was it? It was our sneakers episode, I think, right? But anyway, when we were setting up this arc, a few years prior to this, like in late 2009, the Peter Jackson adaptation of The Lovely Bones.
Oh, yes.
It was released. And for those who don't know, it's about a teenage girl who gets abducted and killed by a local fucking weirdo, and it never gets solved. And she lives on as a ghost. And the movie is so bad.
It's trash. It's so trash.
The book already sounds like
it thinks it's so smart as well, but it's trash in it.
Well, I mean, all you need to know as well is, right, so think about where Hugh Jackman goes to as the tortured father in this. The tortured father in The Lovely Bones is Mark Wahlberg. So, so I mean, good luck with that movie. And I also think the fucking pedophile serial murderer is fucking Stanley Tucci. If I remember right, I think it's him, right? I might be mixing him up with the other bald dude from the fucking Kingsman movies, but whatever, it doesn't matter. The point was, this movie came out and it dealt with very similar things just before it, and it was absolutely critically panned, quite rightly. It is truly dreadful. It's almost worth watching for how bad it is, although not quite. And I think this really dampened, as bizarre a sentence as this is, I think it really dampened an audience's desire to watch another child abduction murder movie. I think it just kicked the shit out of that.
But at least until Liam Neeson came along, and then we had 20 of them with him for some reason.
Yeah, but he always gets them back, though.
There's another reason why no one watched this film. I have a theory on most things that are really good that you never get to see. It's if you can't do the bullshit Hollywood 30-second elevator pitch, you can't sell this movie to someone in 30 seconds. You can't. If you even tell them the basic like overviews of the plot, they're going to go, not me, my tempo. They're not going to want to watch it. That's why actually, really, you almost have to do what we did. You have to say something like, "This is actually like one of the best performances ever by a leading actor, and it's Hugh Jackman." You have to do something weird like that and trick them into it almost, because it's going to be mad. Like, I don't think you can sell this to people. It's really hard. I've tried to get so many people to watch this film. That's why I'm glad we did it in this series. We're going to force people to watch it.
Yeah, well, look, I'll put it this way. It's one of those where if obviously it's no good saying this now, but like Monty said at the start, like just don't watch this episode. Like, in fact, actually, when we do those little pre-title,
do this as
splits,
the 30-second thing at the
yeah,
beginning,
do this
yes.
as the 30-second thing. Right? Seriously, don't watch this until you've seen the film. For all the others, I know you put in YouTube, oh, we love it when you just talk. We love your voices. You're so good. Fuck all that. Go away. Watch the film first, then watch this, because there's no way to sort of do it justice with everything we've talked about.
You know, my biggest problem has always been, it's why I'm not cut out to be a celebrity or any kind of famous figure. It doesn't work on me. I can't take sycophancy. I'm the person who I can't handle it that you like my shit or something I like for the wrong reasons. I hate you more than the person who doesn't like it. So, for example, one thing I can't lie, you actually disgust me. The people in the comments who are like, I don't even watch the films. I just listen to the episodes. Like, you actually, like, you're everything I hate in this world of art and cinema. You are antithetical to every reason I'm doing this show, and I sort of hate that you get off on thinking you've watched these movies.
But still like and subscribe, though. Still like and subscribe.
Thumbs up, hit that thumbs up, you fucking.
And leave a comment.
I shouldn't say it. I know I shouldn't say it, but I have to.
No, I get it. But like you said, this is a really hands down, it's a good film. I know there'll be people out there who'll be like, how good can a Hugh Jackman, Gyllenhaal police procedural movie be? Like, it's going to be really bad. Like, just trust me. I've shown this film to a lot of friends down the years who haven't seen it, and their first impression, their first takeaway, is always like, wow, how the fuck did I miss it the first time around?
That was my takeaway, guys, for sure, because I'm the one who hadn't seen it before, and I was blown away. So really excellent. Definitely recommend. And we said this before, but this is by far the film that it most matters that you watch it first that we've done. It's also going to be our longest episode so far of Foreplay, even longer than our Heat episode somehow, until we get to Dune 1 and 2, which will definitely be our longest episode.
We didn't even talk about Paul Dano. This is the movie, more than There Will Be Blood, that really cemented him as, if you need a weirdo, if you need a creepy sex weirdo with big glasses, you just cast Paul Dano.
He was great. He was great.
Yeah, it really was. Creepy sex weirdo, but yeah, great.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll be back with more Villeneuve for next week. Again, it is Sicario, and then the following episode will be Dune. We'll see you then.